Section 14 of the Fables of Pilpay. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Fables of Pilpay by Anonymous, translated by Abdullah Ibn al-Muqaffa and Joseph Harris. Section 14. The Two Travelers and the Lion Carved in Stone. Fable 6. The Two Travelers. There were once two friends who made a resolution never to leave each other. In pursuance of this, for a long time they always traveled together. But one day, as they were journeying in search of their common advantages, they came to a deep river at the foot of a hill. And the place was so delightful that they resolved to rest themselves by the stream. After they were well refreshed, they began to look about them, and pleased their eyes with what they could discover most curious in so pleasant a place, and at length cast their eyes upon a white stone that contained the following words written in blue letters: Travelers, we have prepared an excellent banquet for your welcome, but you must be bold and deserve it before you can obtain it. What you are to do is this: throw yourself boldly into this fountain and swim to the other side. You shall there meet with a lion carved in white stone. This you must take upon your shoulders, and without stopping, run with it to the top of yonder mountain, never fearing the wild beasts that surround you, nor the thorns that prick your feet. For be assured, nothing will hurt you, and as soon as you are got to the top of the hill, you will immediately find yourselves in possession of great felicity. But if you cease going forward, you shall never come to the happiness, nor shall the slothful ever attain to what is here prepared for the industrious. Then Ganem, for that was the name of one of the two companions, says to Solomon, for so was the other called: Brother, here is a means prescribed us, that will put an end to all our pains and travel. Let us take courage, and try whether what this stone contains be true or false. Dear brother, replied Solomon, it is not for a man of sense to give credit to such an idle writing as this appears to me to be, and in a vain expectation of I know not what uncertain gain, to throw oneself into evident danger. Friend, replied Ganem, they who have courage contemn danger, to make themselves happy. There is no gathering the rose without being pricked by the thorns. Be that as it will, answered Solomon, it is but a romantic valor that prompts us to attempt enterprises, the end of which we know not, even though we should succeed. And if we are in our senses, we must see that it is not our business, for the sake of a dark promise, to throw ourselves into this water that seems to be a kind of an abyss, from whence it may not be easy to get out again. A rational man, brother, never moves one of his feet till the other be fixed. Perhaps this writing may be a mere whimsy, the idle diversion of some wandering beggar, or even, if it should be real, perhaps when you have crossed this river, this lion of stone may prove so heavy that you may not be able to do as you are ordered, and run with it without stopping to the top of the mountain. But supposing even that all this were easy for you to perform, yet trust me, it is not worth while to attempt it. For when you have done whatever is by you to be done, you know not what will be the issue of your trouble. For my part, I will be no sharer with you in dangers of this kind, but shall use all my rhetoric to endeavor to dissuade you from such idle and chimerical undertakings. No persuasions, replied Ganem, shall make me alter my resolution, and therefore if you will not follow me, dear friend, at least be pleased to see me venture. Solon, seeing him still resolute, cried out, Dearest brother, if you are weak enough in your reason to determine on this rash, and to me distracted undertaking, give me a last embrace, and farewell forever. You have refused my admonitions, and I have not the power to stay and be a witness to your ruin. On this they took a parting embrace, and Solon, taking leave of his, as he supposed, unhappy brother, set forward upon his journey. On the other hand, Ganem went to the brink of the river, resolved to perish or to win the prize. He found it deep, but strengthened by his courage, he threw himself in and swam to the other side. When he had recovered the dry land, he rested himself a while, and then lifting up the lion, which he saw before him, with all his might, ran with it, without stopping, to the top of the mountain. When he had reached the top, he had before him the prospect of a very fair and glorious city, which, as he was attentively viewing, there issued from the lion of stone such a terrible thundering noise, that the mountain and all the places around about it trembled. This noise no sooner reached the ears of the inhabitants of the city, but they came running up to Ganem, who was not a little astonished to see them, and presently some that seemed to be superior to the rest in quality and degree accosted him with great respect and ceremony, and after they had harangued him with many large encomiums, they set him upon a horse sumptuously caparisoned, conducted him to the city, where they made him put on the royal robes, and proclaimed him king of all their country. When this ceremony was over, and the inhabitants seemed all very well pleased with their king, the new monarch desired to understand the reason of his advancement, to which they answered, that the learned men of the kingdom had, in regard to the future happiness of their country, by virtue of a talisman so charmed the fountain which he had crossed, and the lion of stone which he had carried to the top of the mountain, that whenever their king died, any one who was so adventurous as to expose himself to the hazards he had done, and brought the lion safe to the top of the mountain, had this reward for his courage, that the lion roared out so prodigiously that the inhabitants, hearing the noise, went forth in search of the person who had arrived with it, to make him their king. This custom, pursued they, has been of long continuance, and was meant to ensure us for our king a man of courage and resolution, and since the lot has fallen upon your majesty, your sovereignty is absolute among us. I have rehearsed this fable to you, spouse, continued the male fox, to let you understand that there is no tasting pleasure without trouble. But as courage and resolution, you see, are the sure ways to preferment, I am resolved never to give over till I am one of the greatest lords in the court. Kalilah asked her spouse on this what means he intended to make use of to attain his ends. Why, you see, answered Dimna, that our sovereign lord the lion seems to be seized with astonishment and great uneasiness. Now I am determined to attempt at least to cure him of his disquiet. How can you presume, cried Kalilah, to give counsel to a king that never was accustomed to the cabals of princes? Persons of wit, replied Dimna, never want either the means or industry to accomplish their designs. I remember that one day a handicraft tradesman, who by his industry and genius had gained a kingdom, received a letter from a neighboring prince, wherein he expostulated with the new king after this manner: Thou that didst never handle before any other than a chisel or a saw, how darest thou presume to govern a kingdom? To which the carpenter returned for answer: He that gave me wit enough to guide a saw will also give me judgment to wield a sword, with which I doubt not, but I shall be able to chastise the insolence of any of my too arrogant neighbors. I know very well, replied Kalilah, my dear, that you have both genius and courage. But let me put you in mind that kings do not always cherish with their favors those who have wit and merit to deserve them, but their oldest servants, and such as have done the state important service, generally are the people who have the greatest share of their favors. And as you are but a newcomer, and indeed none of the most eminent of the king's servants, when you consider this, which, believe me, is the true state of the case, what can you pretend to? Value me not, replied Dimna, on the merit of what I am at court at present, for, let me tell you, I hope in a short time to have a much more considerable employment. I well know what are the methods of ingratiating oneself with great persons, and let me for your own sake inform you that they who aspire to be admitted into the cabinet of princes ought to have 5 particular qualifications, which are, never to be in a passion, to avoid pride, not to be covetous, to be sincere, and never be astonished at the changes of fortune. These are very good maxims, replied Kalilah, in all states of life. But pray tell me, suppose you were advanced to be the king's favorite, what are the virtues you would practice to keep his esteem? I would serve him, replied Dimna, with a perfect fidelity. I would punctually obey him, and whatever the king does, always believe his intentions good. I would persuade him to do good, by laying before him the benefits he will receive thereby, and dissuade him from doing whatever may be prejudicial to himself or his kingdom. I find, said Kalilah, thou art resolved to go on with this design, and must needs own thou seemest to have well qualified thyself for it. But yet let me warn thee to have a care what thou doest, for it is a dangerous thing to serve a prince. Wise men say that there are 3 sorts of persons who are wholly deprived of judgment: they who are ambitious of preferments in the courts of princes, they who make use of poison to show their skill in curing it, and they who entrust women with their secrets. A king is well compared to a high mountain, upon which there are mines of precious stones, and also numerous herds of wild devouring beasts. It is a difficult thing to approach these, but more dangerous to dwell with them. Kings are also well compared to a wild ocean, wherein seafaring people generally either make their fortunes or perish. I am not ignorant of all this, replied Dimna in his turn, but know also that kings resemble fire, which will burn those that approach too near it. But let me also tell thee, wife, that he who is afraid to venture will never come to anything. After this discourse, Dimna went to wait upon the lion, and as soon as he approached his presence, made him a profound reverence. The lion took immediate notice of him and asked who he was, to which some of his courtiers replied that he was such a one, and that his father had a long time served his majesty. Oh, said the king, I now remember him. Then turning to Dimna, well, friend, said the monarch very graciously, where do you live? I supply my father's place in your majesty's household, replied Dimna, but till now I have never durst presume to appear in your majesty's presence with the offer of my service. I hope your majesty will not disdain the oblations of my faithful intentions, though I am the meanest and unworthiest of all your majesty's servants. Dry wood is sometimes as much esteemed as a beautiful tree. The lion was much pleased with Dimna's eloquence, and looking upon his courtiers, wit, said he, resembles fire, which will show itself, though covered with ashes. Dimna was so overjoyed that his compliment had pleased the king, that he took his opportunity to beg a private audience of his majesty, and when they were together, Sir, said Dimna, first let me implore your majesty's pardon for presuming to speak before your majesty, and then, if I may presume so far, beseech your majesty to let me know the cause of your melancholy retirement. For within these few days I have, with great sorrow, observed your majesty has not been so cheerful as you were wont to be. Fain would the lion have concealed his fear, but pleased with Dimna's winning behavior, and wanting some one to unbosom his grief to, he determined to entrust him with the fatal secret of his fears. Just as he was about to utter the cause of his troubles, behold, Cohortorbe set up a most terrible bellowing. This so disordered his countenance that he found himself constrained, even though he had not before intended it, to tell Dimna that the terrible noise of this beast, whatever he was the cause of all his disturbance. I imagine, said the king, that the body of the beast which I hear bellow so dreadfully must be proportionable to the sound of his voice, and that being so, it is in vain for us to think of resisting him, and indeed it is little better than madness for us to tarry any longer in these woods. Is that all that troubles your majesty? Said Dimna. Nothing else, answered the lion, and this I think sufficient. Sir, replied Dimna, you ought not to quit your princely habitation for this. It is not for a king to be afraid of a mere sound, but rather to fortify his courage with so much the greater resolution. Those creatures that make the loudest noises are not always the biggest, nor the strongest. A crane, as big as he is, has neither strength nor courage to encounter the smallest hawk. And he that suffers himself to be deluded by bulk of body may likely enough be deceived, as the fox was. End of section 14.